a few examples of what challenge prizes can do and achieve. And really, they fall into three brackets. One is which they can produce breakthroughs. So like with the Longitude Prize originally, come up with the chronometer. They can shine a light on a neglected issue or problem. Sometimes you want a challenge prize just to get attention around a subject or issue. But they can also build capacity of new innovators and create whole new markets. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Prizes for breakthroughs. So it's not really a prize, but back in 1961, JF Kennedy made this great statement to the US, we are going to go to the moon before the end of the decade. And that created a huge race by NASA and the university research establishment and associated companies to try and do that. This was a big goal, a mission-oriented goal that motivated that. And I think was part of the thinking then behind the Ansari X Prize, which was around creating privately funded spaceflight. So after NASA had perhaps become less and less what it was in its heyday, the X Prize Foundation launched this challenge prize, which was $10 million, in order to incentivize private operators to come in and start creating a spaceflight industry. And this was a $10 million prize to put a person into suborbit and back onto Earth again, and once again within the space of a week. So it had a very clear objective. And it was solved in 2004 by Spaceflight 1 that is accredited with then helping to create that rush towards a private sector spaceflight industry in the US. And the Spaceflight 1 is now the Virgin Galactic. Richard Branson came in and bought it, basically, which also demonstrates some of the limitations because that was one in 2004 and there's still no space tourism, so prizes don't do everything. One we're working on at the moment is whale tracking. So there's a big problem around the demise of whale species around the world because they're destroyed by fish nets and pollution, and ships run into them. And one of the problems is if you want to conserve the whale species, you have to know where they are. And so we're interested in developing a challenge prize which is around better identifying and knowing where the whale populations are. And we're looking for, hopefully, a breakthrough in that. And then finally, a challenge prize that we run that is looking for a breakthrough is the new Longitude Prize, which is looking for a rapid diagnostic that would differentiate bacterial from viral. It'll basically tell you, do you need to take antibiotics or not? And if so, which ones? And it needs to be accurate, cheap, and affordable, and globally applicable. And so there's a big drive for a breakthrough there that will have a big impact on drug resistance infections. That's an example of prizes for breakthroughs. But you can also have prizes that shine a light on a particular issue or problem. So the Longitude Prize, the new one that I just mentioned for antimicrobial resistance, was voted for by the British public. So we presented the public with 6 options on BBC Two, and they voted for which one they felt was most important, and they voted for antimicrobial resistance. The Longitude Prize has already had an impact in raising awareness of drug-resistant infection and of the misuse of antibiotics, which is an important element in addressing antimicrobial resistance. Whether or not a prize is solved, it's already achieved that. We also ran the Big Green Challenge. This was around getting communities across the UK to come up with solutions that would dramatically reduce their CO2 emissions. And 350 communities got together to come up with approaches and models for reducing their CO2. Many of those are carrying on today. So it was community-based action with the introduction of new technologies and approaches, microgeneration, solar panels, this sort of thing. So it shined a light on a particular problem. Another challenge we're working on at the moment is around drone technology. So drone technology is advancing very, very rapidly. Now, we can think of other technologies, I'm sure, that have advanced very, very rapidly, where the public have suddenly said, we don't want this. We think that the introduction of drone technology is almost inevitable. But we think that what's really important is that people who are going to benefit from it, but also the people that where there may be issues and problems, and that's people within cities, and the cities themselves have a say in how they are introduced and shaped. And so the Flying High Challenge is working with cities to say, what do you want drones to do and not to do? And then you create the challenges in order for the drone sector to come to that, rather than waiting for, you know, Amazon or Post Office, whoever it may be, to come to you. So that's an example of engagement. Final one, prizes that make markets. So challenge prizes can stimulate the creation of whole new markets. DARPA, back in 2004, launched a challenge around driverless vehicles in the Mojave Desert. None of them, there was a huge race. None of them completed the race. And they repeated it year on year, and it got harder year on year. This was long before Facebook or Google or Uber or anyone else was getting into driverless cars. It was this rush by DARPA that was stimulated through prizes that created the early beginnings of the driverless car technology that we now see on streets, including in London today. Another example is the Haiti Mobile Money Initiative. So the big problem here was that people in Haiti didn't have access to banking. And so a $10 million challenge was launched, and this was around whoever could first demonstrate that they were providing banking services to people across Haiti. And it stimulated the creation of a whole new marketplace with mobile phone operators and banking providers coming in, and a banking industry that was providing banking to individuals across Haiti was created almost overnight. We think that making markets and stimulating markets is a really important role for challenge prizes. And the people where we think where this is perhaps most relevant are regulators, because regulators' role is in creating better markets. And regulators should be interested in encouraging innovation to come in and address some of those gaps or problems that are not being sufficiently addressed. And so we're running a challenge with called the Open Up Challenge, which is backed by the CMA, which is the UK regulator for banking, which is stimulating the creation of innovation for the benefit of small business entrepreneurs through the use of open banking data. We think that's a model that could be applied in a whole variety of other areas where the regulators are thinking, there's a problem here, it needs innovation, let's stimulate it through a challenge methodology and potentially through regulatory mechanisms as well. So that's it. Those are the rough parameters around when do you do a challenge prize, how do you then create a challenge prize that works, and some of the goals around a challenge prize in terms of stimulating markets, shining a light on a particular issue, and also, obviously, in many instances, creating that breakthrough and solving that big problem. And I'll finish there. Thank you.